the picture that I have from the other side is that you are in such a pure form of love that there is no guilt, there is no forgiveness necessary because you are in this space of pure unconditional love.
I'd like to welcome to the Journeying Soul, Marie Alessi. How are you doing today, Marie?
Really good, thank you. I'm in such a good state in my life at the moment, so I'm in a really happy state right now. So it's really good.
We had just started with basically, 2018. Your
Mm,
husband Rob died of an aneurysm, and it was also you
yeah,
had to deal with something that not a lot of people have to deal with, where you were in Sydney and he was in Perth.
yeah,
Like he was,
yeah,
and for people who don't know Australia or just don't know the distance, that they're 5 hours apart by plane, I think you said.
yeah, exactly. Yeah,
So, but your first thing, you kind of knew something was wrong before you got the
yeah,
call.
yeah.
Yeah.
I knew something was wrong because Rod was actually supposed to wake me up that morning. There was something going on with my phone. It didn't update properly, and he said, plug it in overnight. And that was our final conversation. We talked about love and connection. And then that phone thing came up, and I said, like I needed as an alarm the next day. And he said, don't worry, baby, I'll wake you up.
Mhm.
And that phone call never came. And because Rob was always 100% reliable, like when he says, I call you at 7:30, he would call at 7:30. And I remember waking up at 7:31 and I had this odd little niggly feeling. I was like, there's something is different, something's wrong. But as a mom, you get on with your day. You've got two kids to get ready for school. One of them was even sick, so I had to look after him, and he was staying home. And then all day, all morning, I was just trying to text him, call him. I couldn't get in touch with him until about lunchtime when I had this epiphany. And Rob always leaves the itinerary where he's staying with me. So I found the hotel. I called the hotel. I told them who I was, that my husband was staying with them. Said, please don't think I'm one of those stalking wives. I just want to know that he's okay. He was supposed to call me in the morning. And then I said, can you please send somebody up to his room to check on him because I have not heard from him all day. And the second I said it, I had such a miniature vision, like it was like a split second where I saw him collapsing in a shower. And I remember shaking my head thinking, don't go there, Marie, don't drive yourself crazy. That's just, don't go there. But I still said it to them. I said, and can you please check in a shower? I thought they must think I'm completely crazy to say things like that. But
Yeah.
that's where they found him. He had
Yeah.
a brain aneurysm in the shower and collapsed and died.
Yeah. It's a thing where obviously, you had the feeling in the morning, but you do what we all do. It's like we're rational. It's like, this is just a feeling.
Yeah,
I don't have any proof that matches that yet, but the feeling
yeah,
stayed with you. I want to say after Rob died, you talk about like discussing with your sons, telling your sons. And I thought you said you had the presence of mind to say the most brilliant thing. I wrote it down. When you said to your son, nothing is going to happen to you. I will take care of you, which really
yeah.
is, Marie. I mean, you must have been so distressed, but that is the perfect answer for a child in that
Mm,
moment. And I mean, you had the composure to to say it. I mean, I know you obviously you
yeah.
meant it too, but I mean, hats off to you because that's not what
Thank you.
every parent is able to do. And there's nothing wrong with those parents either. It's just shock
Nobody has
hits
ever said that
people.
to me.
Oh,
Thank
well, that
you. I
that stuck
really, I
out.
really, oh, wow.
Well,
Thank you.
when I read your book, it's like, I was that was just something that struck me, that it's like if people who've had that kind of loss could have a manual of how they're supposed to handle it. But you can't, like I
Mm,
said, it's such a shock. You had such a shock and
yeah.
you managed to come out with like the right answer,
Thank you.
even in your
Thank you so
wreckage.
much.
So that was just like and then the other thing obviously that we're going to talk about, this is what we want to dive into,
Mm,
is how you took it from there. Um, your story reminded me of somebody else that I interviewed. I had interviewed, this is a couple months ago, a guy named Chris Cochran, and his son Christian.
oh, I
You know
know
Chris?
Chris. I
Okay.
interviewed him on my podcast.
Okay,
Oh, I
so
love
you
him.
know, so his
Yes,
son Christian
I
died
know
at
his story.
23, and he
Yeah.
wrote a book called What's Good About Today, which was
Yes.
the question that, like, the thing that Christian said to him, like, well, what's good
Hmm.
during his illness? What's good about today? You
Yeah.
similarly had Rob had left you kind of with the instruction in advance. Now, he was not ill like
Yes.
Christian. He had no idea.
No.
But he said to you each morning when you wake up, you can choose to focus on the positive or the negative.
Yeah. He
Tell
always said
me,
that to me. He was like, and I found that so beautiful because Rob always said to me, "You've got two choices, babe." I was his saying that, you've got two choices, babe. Also saying that Rob was completely healthy till the day he passed. There was no pre-warning. A brain aneurysm is something so out of the blue. But going back to the what if conversation, that was actually based on Rob coming home late from work one day. There was a 2-hour detour because there was a collision, and we learned that a young dad had a front-on collision with a truck and died on the scene, and his daughter was only 16 months old. So we had this conversation, how would we deal with that? What would I do if it happened to him? What would he do if it happened to me? And the outcome of that conversation was pretty simple. We were like, we just want each other to create the happiest life possible for the boys and ourselves. Like, we really wanted the other person to continue happiness, because that's what love is. Love just
mhm,
wants you to be happy.
mhm.
That's that simple. It's not easy, trust me, but it's that simple.
Yeah, I do want to talk
Yeah.
about how you actually lived out that choice because a lot of couples
Mm,
can have that conversation.
mm,
And then if something happens like what happened to you, it doesn't mean you're going to actually pick it up and live that out.
yeah,
You can easily,
yeah,
you can spiral in so many ways. So,
yes.
tell me more about how you really did pick that up.
I lost my dad when I was 20, and I was not equipped at all to handle that loss. I was such a daddy's girl. I was so close to him, and he died of cancer. So it happened really, really fast, but there was a little bit of a lead up.
Mhm,
I
mhm,
completely ignored it. I did not want to know. I did not want to see the option of him passing, actually. I was absolutely holding on to he will make it. So it came as a massive shock to me, and I had no support. Nobody knew how to handle grief. Nobody in my circle of friends has ever lost a parent. Nobody has dealt with that before.
mhm.
And I felt completely lost in that loss. It was really quite intense for me, that journey. And over a year, I felt like I was walking around like I just wanted to say like a mental zombie. I don't know if that's inappropriate to call it like that, but that's how I felt.
Well, I mean, the
And
thing is, most people, I
yeah,
mean, grief is like a physiological thing. It's a shock.
mm,
You're kind
yeah,
of not in your right mind. Like, it's not uncommon
yeah,
to
that's exactly
forget
how I felt.
things, to get lost going to
Mm,
places you've gone. So I can
yeah,
imagine, you had
yeah,
that first impact. So please continue.
yeah. Yeah, no, no, I'm just saying, so I had the loss of my dad. That was really, really intense and hard for me to deal with. I had my background in mindset coaching, and I had Rob, who taught me about two choices. And I had those two beautiful boys. They were 10 and 8. And I looked at them when I think, scrap that, I know, telling my boys about their dad's passing was by far the hardest thing I ever had to do in my entire life. It
Mm,
was really confronting, and I had pretty much no time to prepare. There is no sugarcoating a message like your dad just passed. It
mhm,
is just really, I had to say it straight out, and I had 5 seconds to prepare for that message as I was walking down to the living room. Oh, the little faces and the reactions. It was so gut wrenching. But in that moment where the crying and the screaming and the hugging and those promises happened, it was a promise straight from my heart. I knew that what we had talked about, that became my lighthouse in my darkest hour. It became my North Star. Take the kids, create the happiest life possible for them. I had no idea how to do that in that very moment, but I knew that that's where I will take them. I had the direction, and I thought once you know the direction, that's all you hold on to. And I did that. I did that without looking left and right, because I had people standing all around me, shaking their heads, going like, "What is she doing? Why is she so happy?
mhm,
Like, is she in denial? She's not breathing
mhm,
properly." Like, or even disrespectful. I had all sorts of things around me,
Oh,
but
I'm
I didn't
sure
hear
it's like
them.
you're coping
It
too
was like,
well. They're thinking you're coping too
yes,
well, and
how
you
dare
must be
you cope so well?
completely.
Did you not love him? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Mm,
Now, do you think, and I hadn't thought about this when I read your book, but speaking to you now, do you think,
yeah.
you were like kind of twice the age of Flynn and Jed, those are your sons, when their dad died, but do
Yeah.
you think that your prior
Yeah.
experience losing your dad at 20, which isn't that old, do you think that that also helped you knowing what they would want as kids or need as kids
Yeah.
in terms of stability?
100%.
Yeah.
100%, because I had all the things what not to do. I had all the
Right.
things what felt uncomfortable, what felt unsupported. And I knew that these are all the things that we can put to the side because I know they don't work. They just make you feel horrible. So I went by, what did I need? What did I want? I wanted to feel normal. I did not want to be seen as that, the child that lost her dad. I didn't want sympathy. One of the biggest things for me was the condolences lines, the my condolences. It makes you feel so excluded. It makes you feel so alone. And there are words that feel so empty, although I know the meaning behind it. They mean well. I want to believe people mean well when they say that, but it doesn't feel well. It does not feel great when you hear those words. And in particular, not when you're standing in a condolences line and you've got hundreds of people telling you that same sentence over and over again and then have you squeeze the sentence into you. It left me with such emptiness. It was such a horrible feeling. So I thought, that's something that I'm going to spare them. So when we were sitting in this funeral office and we were preparing for the funeral, and you get asked all these questions, the flowers, the coffin, the everything. It's almost like when you're sitting at a funeral parlor, it's like, do you want fries with that? That's
Yeah.
the sort of feeling that you get. So do you want a viewing? Do you want a condolences line? And as soon as she said, I said no. And I was almost a bit, surprised by how vehemently that no came out. And the siblings looked at me and there was no discussion. There was no place for discussion. But I knew that it would be a big funeral. There were about 500 people in a midweek funeral for Rob. And I thought, I cannot do this to my boys or myself, to have hundreds of people lining up and say my condolences to them. That would
Mhm.
have been a horrific experience. And I'm so glad till today that I spared them that experience. It's not a nice one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. I mean, I don't know what to say, Marie. Like, hats off to you for having that boundary because there is so much of the way we grieve today and
Mhm.
has changed. I mean, it's changed so much from what it was 100 years ago, where
Oh,
people
yeah.
would prepare the grave and the body and
Mm,
dig their own grave.
mm,
And I'm not saying that was the better way to do it, but we kind of went into like a wilderness when things got handed over and certain routines that were
yeah.
set up. And not that I think that people, how do I say? I mean, I do think worldwide, I don't want to say worldwide, but many Western countries and including Australia,
Mm,
there can be, we're kind of surprised by death, even though it's coming. We
mm,
don't have a lot of discussion about it and how we do it. So it's like you can get put into a system where these things
mm,
happen. And at least you had some prior experience to say, this little part of
yeah.
this really isn't helpful to the
Mm,
people who are grieving. So,
yeah.
I mean, it's what else do you wish that people knew about? And let's pivot to your area about widows,
Mm,
being a widow.
yeah. Mm. I wish that people would learn to just sit and hold space. People feel
Mhm.
so confronted and mostly uncomfortable with the topic of death, dying, widowhood, whatever, like that whole realm of grief makes
Mhm.
people feel very confronted and uncomfortable. It's been 6.5 years for me at the day of recording this that Rob passed away. And still, when I go to a party or some gathering where I haven't met people before, they don't know my story. And then the dreaded question comes, so what do you do for a living? And I still don't have a way to say what I do without the energy in the room dropping. And I
Hmm.
find that so sad because my energy doesn't drop. I love what I do. I am so I'm really, really happy with the way I can help people through this, because my focus is on healing. My focus is on death or on grief, or my focus is on healing. How can we get you through this? How can we prepare a path for you where you can feel comfortable and happy again, where you can allow happiness in? That's the work that I do. But as soon as I say it, people still
Mm.
feel like it's almost as if it was contagious. Oh, if I talk about that, then I'm confronted with my own mortality, and people don't want to be confronted by that. We all know we're going to die. Everyone. That's the only thing we all have in common. We get born and we die. That's
Yeah.
the two things. No matter what culture, no matter where we come from or what we do, we get born and we die. And yet, it is so confronting for people, and it
Yeah.
is. Yeah.
I refer to it to people as like, as people are in the club or they're out of the club. Like if
Yes.
you've been touched by a loss, like you
Yeah.
have, like I have, you're
Yeah.
in the club. And as painful
Yeah.
as it is, as I mean, it makes your life richer as you go on.
Mm.
You are in on
Mm.
some of the secret and some of the meaning of life that you weren't in on
Yeah.
before. And
Yeah.
I don't know have the magic answer for communicating to people outside of the club who haven't been initiated.
I don't have it yet either.
Because they do have a little bit of that reaction, like, what? You're doing grief? Huh?
Yeah.
They just
And
it's
there's often that moment where they then say, "Oh well, I just don't understand," and I usually give them um, a very lovely smile, because it comes straight from my heart, and then I'll say, "I'm glad you don't," and that usually settles it. I'm really glad when they don't understand, because it's exactly what you just said. You're not in the club.
I should think about your approach because I guess I'm a little bit more judgy about it because that is such a warm thing, nice thing to say. I'm glad you don't. But
Mm.
to me, it's almost like
Yeah.
talking to a child where it's like,
Mm.
you're a child, you should still be a child. Like you don't want to step on somebody's innocence. But I have a little bit
Yeah.
more of a hard time, I think, when I'm dealing with somebody who's in their 60s or in their, where I feel like, you should know a little better, a little something. But that's a nice and generous and warm thing to say. I will
Yeah.
try to adopt that.
Thank you.
I wanted to mention something else that I found lovely about you when you sort of resolved to make a happy life for your kids, pursue
Hmm.
happiness. You
Hmm.
you made a choice. I wrote a note here that started with singing. But also, yeah, but also
I
the
know that
thing,
moment. Yeah.
yeah. Well, tell me about it, and then I'll go on. Tell me
Oh,
about it.
I keep it super brief. It was a moment because I sing a lot, and I sing a lot when I'm happy. When I'm happy, I sing. That's just the way I am. And there was one song that I would always sing and often sing to Rob, and that was "Love Is in the Air." I love that song. It was so us, Rob and I were that couple,
Yes, you
and
met and you married after 10 months on the beach. Like it was boom,
yes,
boom, boom. You
yep,
two were for
we
each
met, and
other.
10 months later we were married. It was absolutely incredible. Like people always say, when you know, and I never knew what to do with that. I'm like, what is that for a weird saying? But yeah, so that song, "Love Is in the Air," was one of our favorite songs, and it was so us. It was very, very much us to the T. And I remember a moment in the kitchen. It was only a couple of months after Rob passed, or maybe a few weeks. It was really maybe, very, very early after. And I remember I was cutting some vegetables, I was cooking lunch, and I started singing. This song came up for me in my mind, and I started singing, and my voice just left me. I could feel like there's nothing left in that song for me. But then there was this click that you've got two choices, babe, and I almost had to laugh about it, because it was like, are you going to stop singing now or what? It was almost like a bit of a, Rob was always like, we were always having a joke and a laugh together, and there was this moment where I felt like, don't give up singing, don't give up singing now, because that's part of your choice to live a happy life. And singing for me was happiness. So I remember I gave it my all to continue singing that song. It was definitely not with the same enthusiasm and strength that I usually had, but I did it. And it was a very conscious decision in that moment to continue singing. Because if I
Yeah.
don't, what choice do I make then? And it's not the choice that we had made for each other. So, yeah,
I've
that
said to
was my
some
little singing
people,
story.
I've said to some people in grief, like there is a point, and it's at different times for different people, but there is a
Yeah.
point where you have to make a choice to sort of fake it till you make it. like to
Mm.
go out to the thing you wouldn't go out to start a
Yeah.
new type of tradition you do during the holidays, to do something that even
Mm.
though it's going to feel it doesn't feel the same, it doesn't feel normal even,
Yeah.
but you get to a point where you have to do that. Like in your case, okay, I'm going to sing the
Mm.
song. It's not the same, but I'm I'm going to resolve to
Yeah.
do it.
Yeah.
You also had made talk about making some choices in your book that I thought was another thing that I thought was interesting, which was you talked about embracing kind of the you were before. Do
Mm.
you know what I'm talking? Do you know what I'm referring to? The reason I thought that was so interesting was because I think for some people, many people who've gone through a
Mm.
loss, you don't want to be the person you were before, because the person you
Yeah.
were before was enabled to be shocked by this loss, like was like didn't see
Mm.
something coming, like was able to have
Mm.
this thing happen that they couldn't control. And so you can
Yeah.
kind of reject that person. But you talk about making like an effort
Mm.
to bring that person in, like you're not shunning that person who didn't know that this loss was going
Yeah.
to happen.
Yeah. For me, it's actually something that later on I turned into a really beautiful exercise that I did at all of my retreats, and that I call that exercise embracing all of you. And that involves embracing the person that you were, and all of those parts that you really need to look at and go like, okay, everyone like listening to this right now, think of all the parts that make you you. There's the inner child, there is the adolescent, there's the young adult in you, the mom, the dad, the colleague, the friend, the sister, the brother, whatever. There's all these parts of us. And then there is also in terms of character traits, you look at what makes you you. Is it kindness? Is it jealousy? Is it like, and then you can look at all the parts and say, what is it that you love about these parts? You don't go in like, which ones do I don't like? You go, what is it that you love about these parts? Because that's the exercise of embracing all of you. When you experience a loss, you eventually always get left with this question: who am I after loss? Because yes, life changes. Oh, life changes. But part of you is still the same you and has still got the same needs and wants and
Right.
dreams. And then there is new parts coming in. So it really is this whole exercise of embracing all of you. And that includes looking at the previous parts, at the new parts, and looking into what do you like about them. So it's a real heart opening, embracing exercise. And I really love that. It's very powerful when we run that. Yeah.
Mhm. Also, tell me about the color game. You mentioned something
Oh,
in your
the color orange.
Well, this was
Yeah.
also curious to me because I have to tell you, for the last, I'm going to say it's like 2 years, I have completely been into orange. And you just mentioned it could be any color in this game, but for
Yes.
you, it
Oh,
was
yeah, yeah, yeah.
orange.
I just
And
call
like
it the color orange because it's my favorite color.
yeah, a couple years ago, I fell in love with orange. I was always like a
Yeah.
blue or a girl or in that family.
Mm.
And now it's like, I totally dig on orange. But just tell me about the game in general.
So
We
Frank
fans of
Sinatra already
orange.
said orange is a happy color. So that's, I fully agree with that. So I play that with the color orange only because it's my favorite. And you listening to this can play that with any of your favorite colors. So let's just go with orange for today. So just pick one color for tomorrow. Let's go with orange. And tomorrow, I want you to spend the entire day picking objects, people, anything that you see in the color orange. Really find as many things as possible and write down a list. It
But
would be
anybody playing this
easy,
game,
easy.
they
Yeah.
could pick blue to look for,
Any
green to look for. Yeah.
any color. Yeah. Just pick your
Chartreuse.
favorite color. Just pick one color. That's important. Don't pick the rainbow. Pick one color and go with that for an entire day. So an
Mhm.
entire day you spend like looking for orange. Oh, I see a little trinket box that I've got on my, plays music, and it's like got like little orange on it. Anyway, and then I've got an orange highlight, an orange pen, and an orange business card, and an orange star that my sister made for me that I have to fix. That's why it's laying here on my desk because it's falling apart. Oh, my lip balm is even orange. So it's like I see orange everywhere because I love orange, and I I come up with a list, and as I said, I picked like five to 10 items in a few seconds, so you could easily pick 100 in a day. And it's not even about the number; it's about the focus. And then the next day, we go through this list and your mind is already on this whole focus on the one thing that you want to see. And that's the exercise. You want to focus on the one thing that you want to see. And then the next day you replace the what you want to see with what you want to feel. What's the one emotion that you're missing most in your life right now? You know, and for some people that might be healing, for some people that might be excitement. I just go with a very generic and very beautiful one, and that's love. Because we all want to see more love. We all need more love. And especially when you have experienced a loss, that's what you want to focus on. And then the next day, you look at all things that represent love for you. You know, that might be a mom having her baby. That might be a smile from a checkout chick when you go to your local supermarket. That might be a friend coming over and giving you a hug. You know, love comes in so many different shapes and forms. Yet it really represents something to you where you train your mind to focus on what you want to see. And when you focus on what you want to see, it's not that it's the whole letting go process. Oh, just let go of that. Just let go doesn't make sense. You know, how can people put the word just and letting go in one sentence? If it was that easy, we would all do it. So when we talk about letting go of something, and that can be hand in hand with the grief, the sadness, when you don't want to feel that, you don't go like, how can I let go of the sadness? How can I let go of the sadness? Because your focus is on sadness. So what do you want instead? I want love, I want happiness, I want lightness, I want excitement. Well, then let's focus on that. So you focus on that and you're like, oh my God, you know, and you see brightness and happiness and excitement and love everywhere because you start focusing on that. Do you think about letting go of sadness while you do that? No. But it happens along the way. And that's how you let go. It took me, I kid you not, decades to learn that. And once I had learned it, it became so easy. Like, why didn't I do that all my life? It took me literally 2 or 3 decades to actually learn that lesson of how to just let go.
That's one of those life skills where you have a mind, but nobody really teaches you how to drive it. You know, how do you and you're talking about like a reframing or a redirecting exercise. And most of us get, I mean, this is very normal. I mean, a lot of people have found different ways to work out of it, but it's very normal to have people thinking like, I don't want to feel this way. I don't want to, you know, whether it's anxious about money or a relationship or a loss or you're just, you realize you wake up in the morning and you feel depressed and you felt depressed yesterday and you're like, I don't want to feel depressed. It's hard to turn that into focusing on how you want to feel. So, yeah.
But our subconscious mind does not understand the word don't. That's why the focus is still on the things that you don't want, you know. When you say, I don't want to feel depressed, all that your subconscious understands is depressed. So the focus is automatically on the things that you don't want. And that's why I find it so important to say, what do you want instead? You know, oh, I don't want to feel, I get what you don't want, but what do you want to feel instead? And people are so trained to work from this away from motivation, aka I don't want this anymore. I don't want to be poor anymore. I don't want to grieve anymore. Well, what do you want instead? Oh, I want to feel abundant. I want to feel rich. I want to feel loved. I want to feel happy. I want to feel light. I want to feel excited. And like even just saying that, you know, I can feel my energy perk up because my focus is on what I want. And that's really important.
It's the thing we talk about a lot in manifestation, that it's like exactly your brain does not understand don't. It just understands the thing you're looking at or the thing you're feeling or obsessing about or whatever. It's like you can't eliminate something by thinking about it more. For sure. All right. Switching topics just a little bit. I wanted to talk about the signs you got from Rob, which some people will call after death communications. You had a couple of things. There was a thing with the TV, and then there was a thing with, I want to get the time right, 126.
I forgot about that.
So tell me about the TV. Tell me the TV one first, though.
The TV is a very quick one, and it was so intense. It was at the very first retreat that I ran, and it got late. It was about, I don't know, maybe 12:30, 1 o'clock. And I said to the ladies, I'm going to bed. I said, you know, I'm not your babysitter here at all. I didn't use those words, but along those lines, you know, you can stay up, but be mindful. We have a big day ahead of us tomorrow. So I would suggest that you maybe wrap it up soon as well. Something along those lines. I made it in a sort of chalky, funny way. We all went to bed. And I heard the noise getting less and less, but then I drifted off into sleep at 3:30 in the morning. I can't remember the exact time, but it was around 3:30. I woke up. It was loud, and I went out into the living room, and it was really scary because we're staying in this house. It's not my home. I don't, I rented this really beautiful big house for the retreat. And I come into the living room and I'm thinking, what on earth? Why are they still up partying at like 3:30 in the morning? The music was blaring, and I walk in and the television was on, and there was this massive television in the living room, and there was some music channel on, and it had the word breathe in huge letters all over the television. And the text message that I got was from one of the ladies from the retreat, that she said, I can't turn the television off. It just went on. Nobody switched it on. The television turned on in the middle of the night out of the blue, and nobody knew how to switch it off. There was no remote control. We couldn't find a remote control, or did we find it and it didn't work? I don't know. So nobody knew how the television went on, and nobody knew how to switch it off. It was such a beautiful but weird thing. And of course, the next day, everybody was like, oh, that was my husband. Oh, that was my husband. It was like so funny. So we made a light joke out of it, but it was really, I don't know. I still have no idea how the television just turned on.
So, and tell me about 126.
Yeah, 126 was a big one for me, and still is, because I started waking up at 1:26 a.m. every night after Rob passed for weeks. I'm saying like 5-6 weeks, every single night, 1:26 on the dot. It was never a minute before or after. And every night I looked at the clock thinking, why on earth am I waking up at 1:26? So I started Googling it, and I was thinking, angel numbers 126, and it said something about big new beginnings. I'm like, well, duh, my husband passed, but it still didn't feel like that's the message. I'm like, that's odd. But I posted what I found on Facebook, as you do, and I'm like, I just can't get it. What is it with the 126? And one of the ladies in town that I know, so yeah, she sent me a private message and she said, 126, Marie, can't you see it? And I said, no, I can't. What is it? And she said, it's the 12th of June, 126, 12th of June. And that's the day my husband died. And I'm like, oh my God, how could I have not seen that? I'm such a numbers person. I'm always into numbers. I see numbers and connections and all of that. And my brain works in numbers. And this is why I strongly believe that Rob's communicating to me through numbers. I'm not one of those zooms and, my husband's communicating to me. But I could see numbers all the time. And in particular, when I had to make decisions or whatever, I would see a number 126 somewhere, or 12 or 6. It was always the number 12 mainly, or 126. And I'm like, wow. And when I realized what it was that night, I woke up at 12:06 and I looked at the clock. I'm like, ha, very funny. I get it now, And it was almost like a bit of she got the message. 12:06, it's 12:06, And I'm like, oh my God. And I went back to bed because I had to quickly go to the bathroom, and I went back to bed and I snuck in between the boys. They were sleeping with me for the first 9 months or so after Rob died. And I look over at the clock again and it's at 12:09. And that was the moment. And I know you can make all this up in your mind. I get it. But this is obviously how my mind works. And it was the moment where I felt you connected with my dad, because my dad passed on the 12th of September. So it was at 12:06 and 12:09 that I saw that day. And I'm like, you met my dad, because they never met. My dad passed when I was 20, so Rob and my dad never met, yet they were so alike. I always said, I wish you could meet my dad. And it was like, okay, you guys met now, you've connected. And there's hardly ever a day or a week, I should say, where I don't see 126 or 12 or 6 somewhere. It's ongoing. And
I just want to offer you, let me offer you 2 things in this vein.
Sure.
I had done a film called The Grief Monomyth. This is like 10 years ago. And there was a woman that I interviewed, and I can't remember what the meaning of 105 was, but she had a similar thing where the clock kept showing 105, 105, 105. So that happens. And also, a thing that happens for mediums and people developing their abilities, but also when you lose somebody and you're reestablishing that relationship, is whether you're becoming a medium or it's a personal thing for you, you have to develop, or you wind up developing your own personal, like, symbolic language. Like, there's different things that come through that are clues to you. Like, that's a thing that Rob is with you going, hey, babe, you know?
Yeah, well done. You've done
Yeah.
your first. Yeah, it really
So
felt like that. I'm like, oh, thanks, babe.
yeah, and it's so wonderful when you get that, because some people, I mean, I'm
Yeah.
not, some people want to have the goodbye dream, or they want to, and they're just not
Mm,
able to. Like, they're not, in general, they're not like spiritually oriented, or they don't
yeah.
have that open vibe, and that's not a judgment of those people. It's just
Mm,
not everybody gets it, but a lot of people who many people do, and many people who also are not very spiritually oriented, winding up having that experience where, like, I don't know what the hell that was, and I'm never telling anybody about it, but they have it happen. So I'm glad you've
yeah.
got, your
Yeah.
126 and your 129 codes. And the thing too that makes that personal to you in a way is that when you were saying 126, I'm like, it doesn't mean anything. Here, that's December 6th. It's the opposite, as you know,
Of
up here.
course. Yeah.
So it
Yeah.
means it means
Yeah.
something to you.
Yeah.
So, Marie, I did want to just ask some questions, just if you want to talk about it before I go into what I call my final lightning round of questions. You specifically at some point in your work um, have done speaking and talking and about widows, and how widows in particular, you're a young widow. I mean, I
Yeah.
do think there's a little bit of a
Mm,
difference between the way older widows are welcomed when everybody's husband's dying at the same time.
yeah.
There's this part of life. Like,
Yeah.
my mom is 84. She is not the only widow around. But as a
Mm,
younger widow, what do you wish that people knew about
mm.
younger widows? If you want to talk
I
about this
think,
today.
oh yeah, no, absolutely. Like that's why I did my TEDx talk redefining our image of a widow, because I feel when we talk about widow, as you said, we usually, when you hear the word widow, you think of an older person wearing black and her life's over, basically. That's
Mhm.
how they are treated.
Mhm.
Oh, now you welcome to that club. It's another
Yes.
club. It's a different club.
Yes.
And it's almost like, so this is the end of the road sort of thing. And I was certainly not at the end of my road when I was
Mhm.
45. I was at the beginning of another big road ahead of me that I wasn't even aware of at that stage. And it comes back to what I said earlier in our conversation about, I wish people would learn to just hold space. People feel like they need to give advice, and that's how we are trained. Somebody's hurting, we want to help. I'm built like that too. Somebody's hurting, I want to help. Yet I
Yeah,
have
but
learned that I'm not helping when I shower them with advice that might not be helpful for them.
I
And in
think also a lot of
particular,
people in vacuum, what I learned, because I had a father and sister who were both sick for a really long time. So even before they
mm,
died, there was this thing going on where I feel that a lot of people say things to you to make them feel better about themselves. It's almost like you're not
yeah,
there. Like, they're saying something to you
yeah,
as a widow that makes them
yeah,
feel learned, and
they
they've
feel the
got a
need to say
handle, and they're
something.
giving you.
Yeah,
Yeah. But anyway,
yeah.
I'm sorry I interrupted.
No,
Please.
no, no, please don't. It is really like that. People feel the need to say something to make you or themselves or both feel better. And the most helpful things that I've ever experienced in my entire journey was people who would come and sit with me and really hold that space for me without feeling the need to say something to make me feel better or have to give me advice. The worst things for me were those showering me with their stories of like, oh yeah, my sister lost her husband, so that's why you know how I feel. Do you know what I mean? I
Mhm.
became very standoffish when people told me about it. I'm like, I am dealing with a major loss in my life, and all you have to do is tell me about another loss. How is this helping me? This
Mhm.
is not helping me at all. I was like, I got so overwhelmed with people wanting to share their death stories with me. I'm like, why on earth do you think this is helping me? I'm dealing with a major loss here, and you are putting a little bit more on top. And I'm a little, this is not my plate here. Can you just? I mean, this is my plate. Can you put it on somebody else's plate? Sort of. So
Yeah.
I found that very disturbing, and it seems to be such a norm. When you tell
Yeah.
somebody that you lost a husband, they all come with their death stories. It's like, sit with
Marie,
me.
I've talked to so many people. Grief is a big theme of my show. And you're saying
Yeah.
something that I've heard from other people. I mean, the one that sticks out to me the most is this guy, Thomas Brown. His brother had died by
Mm.
suicide, and he took this bike across the country, wrote a really great book about it.
Yeah.
But, he,
I
he
know
just
him
said,
too.
ah, we're a small
Yeah.
little group.
But
He,
we haven't connected yet, but he's just sent me his message, and yeah.
Oh, his book is fantastic. I'm a huge fan of his book.
Mm-hmm.
But when we were talking about what do you want people to know, it was exactly that
Yeah.
same thing. Like, just let somebody be a ball of tears or distress. Just hold space for them. Just be there for them
Yeah.
and let them be
Yeah.
however they're going to be without comparing notes, without telling them how it's
Yes.
going to be. I think
Yeah.
it's it's not that you don't say anything, but you don't
Mm.
need to say a lot. It's just the
No.
presence of being there for somebody. And
And
I
that's exactly it. I just want to pick you up on what you just said because it's so perfect. It's so perfect. People often say, I don't know what to say. Perfect. That itself is exactly what you can say. That's exactly what you can say. When you don't know what to say that to people. I just
yeah,
don't know what to say, or I'm lost
yeah.
for words. You don't need to say anything at all. You can just listen. If you don't know what to say, just listen. That's always my favorite.
Yeah, especially because
Mm.
somebody in grief, like really in the throes of it, it also changes from minute to minute. Like the thing you could
Mm.
say this minute, it might be different in a half an hour, with
Oh yeah.
different stuff going through. So it's
Yeah.
just, people need the kid gloves and the
Hmm.
space to know, just to know that people are there.
Yeah.
So Marie, I'm going to bring you to the lightning round, the final round of questions I ask all my
Bring it
guests.
on.
And, answer as you feel fit and say pass if you don't want to. That's how it goes.
Okay. Bing.
So, what does a well lived life look like to you?
Oh,
Uh-huh.
I'd say flexibility. For me, it's like living in absolute abundance. And I'm not just necessarily talking money here, I'm talking freedom of time, flexibility to be with the kids, and just really having rich experiences. For me, it's all about experiences in life. This year, the birthdays were all about experiences. It's always like, what can we buy you? What can we buy you? Well, what
Mm,
experiences can we create for you? And the boys loved it, absolutely loved it, that I changed it up this year. And our life is so short in a big scheme of things. No matter how old you get, our life is really short, actually. So for me, it's about experiencing joy and really that full-hearted amazingness that we can experience on Earth. Yeah.
yeah. And you've got two teenage boys now. So,
Hmm.
there is stuff to go out and romp around in the world.
Oh, yes.
So,
Yeah.
what do you suspect? Excuse me. What do you suspect is the true nature of reality?
Oh,
Mm,
that's a really deep question. I think that could go for another hour. Um, I think it's really what we make it to be. Reality is such a bizarre concept. It's like something we can't even touch. It is something
mm,
that we use in the English language or in any language, really, in their words, um, to talk about something that we can't put a word to. It's really, we can't even grasp it, how huge and how undefinable it is. I think it's really what you make of it.
mm.
Yeah,
How
we
do
create
you
our own reality.
How do you think that people should take care to be connected to their consciousness or their soul?
How should people take care of that, did you say?
Yeah, to be connected to their consciousness or soul. I asked this,
Yeah,
somewhere in our
yeah,
conversation. Let me just digress that, I had interviewed
sure.
a guy named Tim Cronin, who's from Australia
Mhm,
also. And
mhm,
he's like a meditation master. He teaches meditation.
mhm.
And strangely, like prior to my interviewing him, he had just lost both his parents very close together.
Oh, wow.
And,
Wow.
I didn't know this was going on. This sort of came up in the course of
Mhm.
the interview
Yeah.
because we were talking about another project of his. But I felt that in
Mhm,
some ways, the fact that he had been meditating for so long, like when we were talking about his grief, because of course, when I found out about it, I was like, well, let's talk about it.
mhm.
He had said that, in his moments of meditation, he was able to get to a place where he felt his love for them and it softened his grief because like it became like a grief of appreciation for the love that he had. And I thought, wow, that was something that was like the first time in a way that I would say that I saw somebody who really had a spiritual practice, like such an
Mm,
ongoing thing that in the moment of like crisis and loss, it it was helping him out very quickly. Like this was almost within, I don't want to
yeah,
get it wrong, but I want to say it was in the first month or so he was able
yeah,
to have that softened thing. So that's why I ask in
yeah,
general, like, what do you think? Not even just for grief, but just for living. If you're,
yeah.
how do you think people should take care to be connected to that? Like I said, the
I
consciousness
love that you
yourself.
just shared that story because I actually started for quite some time. I did breathwork sessions with my beautiful soul brother Paolo, and he
Mhm.
held space like no other. And we, every time when we went into these breathwork sessions, I got to, so I had this vision of a really big lake, and I was standing on one side of the lake, and Rob was on the other side of the lake. And almost every time when I went into breathwork, I saw Rob at that lake, and he almost every time was wearing all white. That's what we wore for our wedding. We had a barefoot wedding at the beach, and Rob and I were both in white linen. And he walks over to me, and how symbolic is that? He walks over from the other side of the lake and sat with me. And in this sitting
Mm.
together, it was almost like we had a billion conversations without even sharing a word. It was just that being together, and it was like a conversation without any words spoken. And that gave me so much guidance and support in my parenting, in my decisions that I had to make in life. And that became like a spiritual practice for me that was really, really important. And when I shared that with Paolo, he's like, oh, it feels like you've found a space between the realms where you and Rob catch up. And I love that so much, how he put that, because that's exactly how it felt. And for me, it's really about creating space to sit, to be, to feel, because we need that pause moment. We need that stillness to actually really look after ourselves and nurture ourselves. And I love that you asked me that, because only yesterday I wrote my newsletter about hitting the pause button. That was the title of the newsletter, and it was exactly about that. You know, the spiritual practice for me, it can be anything for anyone, but for me, it has a lot to do with just being in the moment and taking that pause and sit with that. And I feel there's so much healing that happens in that space, in that stillness, in that just being. Of course, when we have the intention, without any intention of healing, that pause can be very negative, can be very scary to sit in the stillness. So, yeah,
Yeah.
your intention and taking the time for it, that's really how I feel that you need to nurture, or how I nurture my soul and my spiritual practices. Yeah.
Yeah. That's it. Beautiful.
Mm.
You
Mm.
also, I had an interview just earlier today where I was speaking with a
Yeah.
woman. It wasn't about grief. It was just about spiritual development in general.
Hmm.
And one of the things we wound up talking about was the fact that, having these practices, it doesn't mean you transcend everything like that. It's not like
No,
nothing will ever affect you. You won't ever feel pain. You won't ever feel
no.
grief. Of course you will, but it really
Yeah.
does. It is a help. It really is a help.
Hmm.
I mean, your breath work, Tom
Yeah.
Cronin's, meditation,
Mm.
there are things you can do that can prepare
Yeah.
you, and not just for like a loss of a loved one, but just for so many things in life.
Mm.
So, but speaking now going to loss. So when you
Yeah.
die, is there anything
Hmm.
you hope to learn or discover? I mean, you've had contact with Rob, so there's something
Mm.
going on the other side. So,
I weirdly, I don't want to say look forward to, because it feels so weird when I say that. But I had many conversations with the boys, of course, as well, about now that they're older in particular, we talk very openly about that, what
Mhm.
happens when you die and what would happen to them when I go. And I said to them both, I have full faith in you that you are okay. I have full faith in you that you will be there for each other, that you will support each other. What I have not experienced yet, of course, because I haven't died yet, is how it would feel to be on the other side and look after your loved ones that you leave behind. Because
Yeah.
Rob's doing that. I can feel that. I can feel his presence. People often say, like, oh, you must feel him all the time, da, da, da. My focus is not so much on Rob's presence or not presence anymore. It is almost something that it is a given. He's always there. My focus is on living our life here on earth. I'm not pretending that, oh, cause just because Rob's on the other side, helping us, guiding us, being there, that this becomes our sole focus. My sole focus is here on earth,
Mm.
because this is my earthly experience, my earthly journey, and my focus is on my boys, our boys, and myself. However, the being on the other side, the picture that I have from the other side is that you are in such a pure form of love that there is no guilt, there is no forgiveness necessary, because you're in this space of pure unconditional love. And to be supporting our boys, I like assuming that I go before them from the other side and showering them with that love, with that guidance, with that presence. That must be an incredible feeling for all of us involved, because one thing I'm absolutely certain of, because I feel it, we instilled that in them and we built that, is the really deep connection that we have, the four of us together. And I'm absolutely convinced and know that this connection still exists when you pass.
Yeah. It's funny. A conversation I was having just this morning, I was talking about the fact that, I'm curious. It's like my feeling is not at all dread about when I die. It's like a
Oh, no.
curiosity. Like I
Mm,
really do want to know. But I mean, I have work to do here. Like I'm here.
mm.
I'm not
Yeah.
I'm not planning
Yeah.
on
When you're
going
here,
anywhere.
there's work to do.
Yes.
Exactly.
But on
Can I
the other
say one more
side, but
thing?
on the other hand,
Sorry.
it's like whenever that happens, hey, that's a whole other
Mm,
deal that I do not have any dread or
yeah.
apprehension about.
Yeah.
There's some groovy things I'm looking forward to that I
Yeah.
suspect I will find
Yeah.
out about.
Just experiencing that unconditional love would be amazing. I just want to add one more thing very quickly. I now call it a spiritual epiphany. Only very few weeks after Rob died, I had
Mhm.
this spiritual epiphany where I had this moment of, wow, we chose this. This is our soul contract. We have chosen this. And it helped me so much in my acceptance, in my healing, in my dealing with Rob's passing. And that to me is something I delved deeper and deeper into. We all have soul contracts in life, but there are some that are way bigger and other ones that are just little contracts, where you might have, I don't know, a conversation with a stranger on the street or whatever. I
Yeah.
truly believe that we all have soul contracts. We all have messages for each other, and we all just walk each other home. I don't know who said that, but that really always resonated with me. We all just
Um,
are here to walk each other home. And
that's lovely.
that
Yeah.
that is really beautiful. Yeah,
Yeah.
I love that.
So where can people find you and the good work that you're doing?
Oh, thank you so much. I think the easiest is just to go on my website, which is mariealessi.com, or go on YouTube, which is YouTube at mariealessi.com. So, yeah, I think YouTube does it differently, youtube.com/at Marie
At
Alessi.
Yeah, or
But
they put
I'm
at in front of stuff
everywhere.
now. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm everywhere under my name, really. And you can just go on my website, and there are all the connections that you need. And feel free to book a chat with me and reach out, and we can have a conversation if you like. So, yeah.
Okay. And any final words for the audience today?
The final words. I would say just, trust your heart. And if you don't know what to say, then just say that. It's fine. If we can all learn to just be there for each other and hold that space, that is such a gift. And I would want that for anyone who's going through adversity, to just have people around them to just be there without having to that feeling of, I need to shower you with advice. So, yeah, that's my final words, really.
Okay. Well, thank you for
And
being
thank
on
you
the
for
show,
having me.
Marie.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks for watching. Click to join us on another journey, and don't forget to subscribe.